Good day, Maswati Lamahle. Once again, we are talking about our issues in the Ministry of Finance and what we're doing and what's going on, just to really try and help people to come closer to government, understand what the government is trying to do, and we try these things to make sure people actually get to really understand it, to try and break it down, to make sure the man on the street really gets a feel for what's going on and why we do it. Today in our Finance in Focus, we are, we can talk about a few things. There's some lovely things in the pipeline, looking at increasing the limit of 1,000 MLIG at the border gates to a higher amount of entry things. We're looking at digitizing a lot of the services outside of revenue services. We're looking at IFMIS, but a lot of these things in the pipeline, I normally like to talk about them when it's actually being done so that we can announce them and actually talk about them. But so today, there's just something that I felt was necessary for people to understand. As a country, as Eswatini, as might have been heard before, we are now chairing the Africa Ministers of Finance at the AU level. So it's called the Specialized Technical Committee, STC. And as myself, as the Minister of Finance, I'm currently chair of that. And at the last meeting, we've all been challenged to say, what can we do as a continent to try to improve things, to try to have our economies improve? What can we do at the AU level to try to impact this? And a strategy that we've been looking at as Eswatini, His Majesty has always, for a long time, really believed that we need to do more to industrialize the continent, because at the moment on the continent we have a huge amount of jobs at the low end. So we've got a lot of the low paying jobs, let's just call it that, agriculture, in that kind of space, mining, and then we have a decent amount in the high paying jobs as well, but we are really lacking in the industrial processing space. As a continent, we generally export our raw materials. And if you look around you, even in where you are, and you look at whatever's expensive around you, in general, you'll find it's actually being imported off the continent, which means that we are exporting raw materials from the continent and we're importing value-added products onto the continent. Now, the numbers, it's about, and actually those are difficult to pin down, but it looks it's around 1.5 trillion US dollars of stuff we export off the continent, and about 1.5 trillion US dollars we import onto the continent. Now, what we're wanting to do, and what is now a program that's now being led by Eswatini, is to say that how can we strategically use the government's purchasing power in this, keeping in mind that about a third of that trade is actually in the government's hands. Governments and state-owned entities control about a third of that buying power is in our hands as Ministers of Finance. One can kind of see it that way. And so how could we look at the list of 1,000, 2,000, whatever the list is, of products that we import, keeping in mind it's now going to be from laptops to refined fuel to pharmaceuticals to printers, staplers, that you go down the list, cars and earth-moving equipment. You go down that whole list of goods, and like I say, it's when you get into water supply and you get into electricity supply, there's just really thousands of items there. And then you look at the 54 countries. We're going to go through a process now. We're going to be trying to do a process of matching this, say which countries are the best suited to produce which products. Understanding that you might have raw materials. Let's just say Zambia has got a lot of copper. And so let's look at Zambia making the copper cables and the copper harnesses for value adding. And certain countries might have certain, more ICT. Let's just say Nigeria is looking at laptops, and South Africa cars, and looking at what we can do. Eswatini will also obviously get their fair share of this. Which country is best suited with raw materials and skill sets to do which products, and try and find a fair way. It won't be perfect because one is working with balances here, but try and match each country with a list of products that they can have exclusive rights to produce. No, not exclusive rights, that they will have the right of first refusal to supply. It's the right of supply that those countries have to all the other African governments on the continent. And it'll kind of work out like this. So let us just say, once we've done the matching to say each country has their list of products, we then say, and let's just use an example, Nigeria has got laptops, and it's their right to produce laptops. It means that when Eswatini is buying laptops and we go through a process of tender, when we finished our process, obviously the Nigerian company can tender in our process, but once we finish the process, even if they haven't won the tender, Nigeria has the right of supply, meaning that if they can supply laptops at the same price, at the same quality, and at the same backup service, it means Nigeria has the right of supply to laptops to Eswatini. Now the idea is, and that is that we are giving away, as African countries now, we are giving away a right of supply, which is really not much to give away. It's a bit of paperwork, a bit of communication you need to do, but receiving a right of supply for whatever is on your list for the whole of the African continent's governments and state-owned entities is an extremely powerful tool to industrialize with. And so that's the idea that Eswatini is coming with here, is to say, let us push this agenda where we actually do all this homework, and we actually give each country that right. We then once we have these things in place, again, we will probably have an AU, we'll plan to have an AU summit, possibly even in Eswatini, and then launch this as a country. And His Majesty King of Eswatini possibly launching this plan. We'll do a lot of lobbying before then and see which countries want to join. The idea would be is not to try and force it, because a lot of our problems on the AU level is the fact that we kind of try and force things, and then we have disputes. Whereas if you'll make it a voluntary thing, so which countries want to join can join, and if they join, then it means that they are part of the whatever they produce, they can supply, and other countries will buy from them. And if countries don't want to join to start with, let's just say Namibia has got power tools and they say they don't want to join, no problem at all, leave them. But we don't take away their power tools. You'll probably find in a few years' time they might decide to change their minds and then join to try and get it. Because we obviously have the Africa Free Trade Area, and this idea is to stimulate that, is actually to force it as governments, to force the free trade areas and to try and get it working a whole lot quicker and a whole lot better. Obviously, we'll put quite strict rules of origins in place, so which means that we're not going to try and steal IP like maybe one might be scared of. Intellectual property will be respected from around the world. At the same time, not even try and make all the profit. Let us just say that Nigeria decides to partner with a private sector laptop producer, one of the big name brands. It might mean that they partner with them, and that all the production, because what we are chasing as a continent, we're going to be chasing the jobs. It's the jobs we are after. If there's a big name brand producing laptops in Nigeria, for instance, they can make their profit and they can get paid for IP, but we ultimately want 100% of the hardware, of the kit that is being produced here, being made on the continent, so that we have the jobs on the continent for all these industrialized jobs. And that is what the plan is doing. That's what the plan's trying to push. So there'll be probably like a 10-year rollout to say in the first year it can be 10% local content, but every year it goes up 10%, and ultimately it must be 100% produced on the continent. So the goods that we buy as governments and ultimately into the private sector must be produced on the continent, so that we have the jobs on the continent and not exporting these jobs. Because right now Africa is becoming the place where many continents send their goods to and take our raw materials for that. And we need to try and change that. And we're thinking of coming with a plan as a country. In fact, we have the mandate now from the AU as Eswatini to work on this plan. This plan has been tabled at AU level at this STC meeting, and it's been adopted to say this is now on the agenda. Eswatini drive the agenda with support from the AU, with support from the ECA, which is UN ECA, which is based there. We have other entities working with even as we speak, and to come with this plan so that we can bring it as a strategy for the AU to try and implement, so that we can really try and push this agenda forward as quick as possible. I really believe in this plan personally. I really think it can work very well. I really believe it will be able to industrialize us. I believe Eswatini can benefit hugely from it. From our list, it means that those products will be produced in Eswatini that we can produce.